Next on Reboot Your Life.
We speak with the director of the Veterans History Project, expanding to women, from the Library of Congress. Then we go to a university professor teaching people how to become advocates to pursue what they're passionate about.
From Riverside Recovery, it's Reboot Your Life. Experience the ultimate reboot of your journey. Start anew and rediscover you. Transform your story. Rewrite your life. It's Reboot Your Life with Cary Harrison and Ashley Neal.
From the Riverside Recovery Studios in Tampa, Florida, Cary Harrison with you along with Ashley Neal, and thanks for listening to Reboot Your Life, where we help you get back the life you love through the life hacks of recovery, resilience, battling addiction, expert advice, and stories of our human experience.
Make sure you subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen. Each week, you'll get new episodes both on the radio and every streaming platform. You can also tweet us at Reboot Your Life.
Well, this Women's History Month, we're shining a spotlight on a truly inspiring story with a special interview from the Library of Congress. We're focusing on the powerful reminder of the contributions that women and minorities have had in the military. Through the Veterans History Project, Monica Mohindra and her team are on a mission to collect, preserve, and share the untold stories of these brave individuals. With us now is Monica Mohindra, director of the Library of Congress's Veterans History Project, to talk about the women of the 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion. Well, you're going to want to know what that is. And they were the only all-African-American, all-female unit deployed overseas during World War II.
They were a predominantly Black battalion of the Women's Army Corps, or WACS, that provided much-needed mail to servicemen in the field. And their story is not just history, but it's soon to be a feature film and a Broadway production.
Monica Mohindra, we're glad to have you aboard.
Oh, thanks so much for helping us shine the spotlight.
Well, it's a spotlight that has been slightly less than 1,000 airline landing lamp lumens for too long, and you are now putting it front and center so that we can celebrate the 61% of humankind, women, for giant contributions that have literally changed the world. Can you share with us the inspiration behind Women's History Month, specializing in armed service contributions?
So we are, I think, in complete agreement that we should always listen to women. But at the Library of Congress Veterans History Project, we're taking this month as an opportunity to help us all pause and think about that percentage you just shared. I'll add another one to that. Women comprise 11% of the U.S. veteran population. And according to Pew Research, in the next couple of decades, that's going to grow to about near 20% of the U.S. veterans population. Here at the Library of Congress Veterans History Project, this is a great moment, a great opportunity to pause and think about women's service and that contribution, much like what you all do there, the story of human experience. That's what the Veterans History Project does here at the Library of Congress, but we do it with you and with your listeners to gather those first-person stories of veterans' experience. So now is a great time to pay attention to women, and some special women in particular.
Yeah, and I would guess that is probably part of what motivated you to focus on this really cool group of women known as the 6888 Central Postal Directory Battalion. That was a mouthful. Can you tell us a little bit more about why you chose this group?
Yes, I love to just call them the 6888 very affectionately. I love how that rolls off the tongue quite a bit easier. As you mentioned, they were the only all African-American, all-female unit to be deployed overseas during World War II. And with our over 117,000 individual stories of veterans' experience, both women and men, in the collection existing already, it is hard to stop and pick an individual or a group that really shouts out and says, pay attention to me now because they're all so good. But this unit is really incredible. And as you mentioned, with the upcoming film and the upcoming Broadway, there's a book that's recently been released. We really wanted to take this moment when people would be pausing during this History Month to offer the opportunity for individuals to get right to the women. Through the Library of Congress Veterans History Project, you can go to our website, loc.gov. That's Library of Congress, LOC.gov/vets, and you can hear directly from them. We have a new research guide highlighting the first person remembrances of those who for whom we have some of their stories in our collection. There were over 800 of them, and they were aged 17 to 52 when they were deployed. And so we wanted to take this month, this pause, to help people know before all the extra more luminous spotlights came out, how you could get straight to their voices unmediated.
You know, Monica Mohindra, I remember history class when I was in school. I'm not the only one who remembers it. Not what I learned in there, but how I suffered through it. Why? Because they taught me. And then in 1783, on a Thursday at 4:00, George Washington signed a document. Oh, okay. What was it? Shut up. And then I was trying to remember Napoleon in 1803. Are you kidding? None of it relevant, none of it connected to anything that's ever going to be my future, but I had to know it. I had to know it in order to get a C+. Remember, just enough dates and times. This is not that.
Yeah.
For people who never fell in love with history in school, what is the purpose of creating these permanent historical archives?
Well, the benefit of the Veterans History Project really starts the moment you sit down or look around and realize that history is happening all the time, including now. And you realize that because as you look around, you see, especially in places like where you are, that service members, veterans, are all around us and among us. They don't necessarily wear a t-shirt or a badge that says so. And when you ask them with the seriousness of purpose, of the idea of being in this collective archive together, if you ask them for their story, the next thing you realize is how their first person experience, their human perspective, what they saw, how they felt, what they ate, what it smelled like, how they kept in touch with their loved ones then, how they keep in touch with the people they served with now, how that connects them to our collective history, as it were, together. But it's all a part of the now, and it's all a part of how we understand how we're also connected to each other. So the importance of this archive is both from that moment of gathering the story, you get it yourself when you do it. You also get it the minute you come to the website and hear the story of someone who maybe served in the same place or the same conflict or did a similar duty to someone that you know. It starts to expand our understanding of what that service looks like and how we're all connected. I hope that answers your question.
Beautifully. We're talking to Veterans History Project Director Monica Mohindra. She's worked for more than 15 years with this project, or the project. She's coordinated major initiatives with members of Congress, the National Museum of the American Indian, the National Endowment for the Humanities, PBS Ken Burns, the History Channel, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial, and the Department of Veterans Affairs. That's on a Thursday. Yeah. The most meaningful part of our work is helping uncover and shed light on the individual personal stories of U.S. veterans, which we find out are not, once again, the movies of the 1960s. In fact, they're people of color. Mm-hmm. They're different minority groups. Mm-hmm. There's a giant spectrum of participants here that maybe some of us didn't know about.
It's true. When we think, I love how you phrase it, the 1960s, when we hear the word veterans, when they hear the word veteran, we're all a bit clouded by our cultural experience. We might be thinking in our mind's eye, that vision that comes to mind is a movie that we saw, a book that we read, a television show, and that might look like one particular kind of person. And unfortunately, that shorthand that we all create for ourselves in our own minds, that means that sometimes when you ask a group of people in a room, your conference, something like that, family picnic, who here's a veteran? Not everyone will raise their hand. Generally, the women may not raise their hand. You say, who here served for the U.S. military or served the U.S.? Suddenly, more people are raising their hands. And that tells me that you're exactly right about how it's easy for us to overlook what service looks like. It's easy to think it's only those who are in the foxhole or at the front lines or in a particular tip of the spear moment. But service looks like all different kinds of things, and it looks like the rest of the country. And to understand the fullness of our collective history, we need to understand that on a person-by-person basis.
Are women, these women veteran archives, are they limited to just the Army? I know that the 6888 were Army, they were WACs, or can women in all branches of the service contribute, including Air Force or Space Command now?
Absolutely, right? The uniformed services has absolutely expanded. The Veterans History Project, since its inception over 20 years ago, has wanted the stories of all those who served for the U.S. from World War I through the recent conflicts, regardless of branch, gender, background, faith, background. We're looking for all of that, and that's true here with this particular spotlight on women. It is important to recognize during Women's History Month these extraordinary women units from World War II that really helped to be the shoulders that we stand on, all of us, not just women now, as you mentioned, not just the Army, but there were the Navy WAVs, the WASPs, which were the Women Air Force Service pilots, the Women Marines, of course, and the Coast Guard Reservists known as SPAR, and incredible subunits of women like the Code Girls who worked with, there was another nickname affectionately given, the brilliant unit of women who broke codes and dealt with encryption and are really credited with helping us win World War II.
I can imagine that there are people that learn about these things through exhibits like the Library of Congress. Some people are never going to go to the Library of Congress. So I imagine maybe that's why a feature film and a Broadway production are another great way to get across this information that these things exist. Can you tell us a little bit more about the feature film?
We are not directly associated with the feature film, but we did want to take this opportunity while people's eyes might be caught by that, the way it happens, to let people know how they can get at it directly. And they don't have to physically come here to the Library of Congress. We all have that capacity to get to the Library of Congress through the web. So if you go to LOC for Library of Congress.gov/vets, you can hear directly from the women. You can be inspired by the book or the film or the musical or any materials that may come out associated with that over the next period of time. But you can hear from them. There's a research guide at that web address, loc.gov/vets, which helps pull together all of the collections that the Veterans History Project has of these women so that you can get right to it. You can hear audio, you can see video, you can see, soon we'll have more photographs and letters up because we just got another donation from the daughter of Indiana Hunt Martin, and we're looking for more, but you can get right to them yourself from wherever you are.
Let's just finish up here because this is fascinating. During COVID, I went to Berlin and it was the inauguration of Liberation Route Europe, which was a conglomeration of different European nations creating a sustainable hiking path and highlighting some of the areas where our side, thankfully, was victorious against the Nazis. And there they had the last 5 surviving World War II vets. They were 98. 99, 100, 101. One was Guy Stern that Ken Burns famously used in one of his documentaries. I got a chance to interview all of them. I think Guy may be the only one still alive today. This is just a couple of years ago, but really got firsthand stories of what they went through. And it's so extraordinary because history repeats itself. What they saw is what some people think they're seeing today. And I think that's the second value of you archiving this and making it freely available to the average person, is so that they can maybe use it as a litmus paper to understand their place in the world and where it might be going.
Absolutely. You can get to these collections, whether it's of the 6888 or other units from World War II to more recent conflicts. You can understand the scope of the Persian Gulf War. Persian Gulf veterans are now our largest living cohort of veterans. And you can also start to find the common threads between the cohorts. And that's easily done just by sitting down and listening to a few. You don't even need to listen to that many, just 3 or 5 or 10 will really give you a much broader perspective about our collective history.
Well, we want to thank you so much for coming on today. We've been talking to Veterans History Project Director Monica Mohindra, and she's worked for more than 15 years with the project, coordinated major initiatives with members of Congress, the National Museum of the American Indian, the National Endowment for the Humanities, PBS, Ken Burns, the History Channel, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial. I'm smiling now because I could go on for about 4.5 more hours, so we'll just truncate it and say also the Department of Veterans Affairs. The most meaningful part of our work is helping uncover and shed light on the individual personal stories of U.S. veterans. Thank you so much for joining us today.
I really appreciate your time and the spotlight. Thank you.
For those who've never known war, freedom is as fragile as the wings of a butterfly. For those who have, there is nothing in life more valuable. Liberation Route Europe follows the path of our liberators, connecting the milestones of our joint past and present. It takes you on a journey through Europe's contemporary history, knowing that what we do today matters most.
Cary Harrison with you. You know, many of us enjoyed true World War II series like Band of Brothers or incredible films like Saving Private Ryan. But where do these events really take place? Well, a European nonprofit collective called Liberation Route Europe has created an entire sustainable route for all of us to see with our own eyes. History and the whats and the whys of how we got to where we are today and how history often repeats itself is a form of continuing education, I guess, that certainly cannot be underscored. So let me introduce you to the managing director of Liberation Route Europe, Rémi Pro, try to pronounce that correctly. He's in Belgium. And Rémi, I want to welcome you and thank you for being a co-creator of this brilliant idea.
Well, thank you, Cary, for having me. It's a pleasure to speak to you tonight.
Not kidding when I'm talking about people getting a chance for the first time ever to see these actual routes that our Allied heroes took from London all the way to Berlin.
Indeed, this is our idea that we created about 10 years ago. You have many museums, you have many cemeteries, historical sites that you can visit, and you can visit for a long time now. But our idea was to connect them and to create a route, which we call the Liberation Route Europe. And if you travel through our continent, it's through Europe, you can indeed visit those different sites and follow a trail and hike, take your bike, your car, and so on. And so our job is to connect the dots.
Cary Harrison with you, and we're talking to Rémi Pro, one of the co-creators and managing director of Liberation Route Europe. For the first time ever, we can visit the exact steps, the trails, the routes that the Allies took to vanquish the Nazis. Imagine seeing Normandy, Omaha Beach, or descending into the original Nazi bunkers. And I want to make sure every American has a chance to see their own history, the history of their own grandfathers who fought to keep this country free and which created the brotherhood we now know and depend on between Europe and America.
Absolutely. When we started the project 10 years ago, there was a virtual connection between those sites. But 2 years ago, we had the intention to create a tangible connection between those sites, and we had a partnership with different hiking associations to create and to put together this list of trails that you can follow and hike. We also want in the future to connect cycling routes as well. So as you said, it is fully sustainable, and you can for now travel for about 10,000 kilometers because indeed you have this trail from London to Berlin, but you also have trails in Italy, from Sicily to Milan, or from the French Riviera, Provence, and then all the way up to Germany. So you have many trails across Europe that we're trying to connect.
You know, we all love mystery history, and I travel a lot to find you those hidden stories. So I'm going to create a tour that takes us along this route. So keep an eye and an ear peeled for more information down the road.
I think this is a very unique experience personally. As you said, we all have family more or less connected to this history. And when you go to Omaha Beach or to the Battle of the Bulge sites, or if you go to Berlin, history is there. And you've heard probably a lot about it. You can watch movies, and you mentioned Band of Brothers. But when you have your personal experience of a museum, of a landing beach like Omaha Beach, or a cemetery where you see 10,000 graves in front of you, then you understand better what happened. And that's something that stays with you for a very long time because you include this emotional component. And then you have the history of your country or the history of your continent, as we speak as Europeans. And then you understand better reading about those different perspectives and seeing them in museums that history is not black and white. History is complicated, and what we want to do is to show that complexity, show those different perspectives, so people have a better understanding of what happened 76 years ago and what it means for today. Because behind it, you have a very strong message of peace, of reconciliation, of freedom that we should always care about and defend.
You know, last summer I was in Berlin for the inauguration of Liberation Route Europe and spoke with the few surviving soldiers who were part of the actual liberation. So here we are in Berlin, Germany. Is this the first time you've been back since World War II?
Yes, it is.
And what did you expect when you knew you were coming back to Berlin?
I was very anxious. I didn't know what to expect because my memories that stood with me for so many years were not pleasant ones because I participated in World War II.
But anyway, I was in a good outfit. We had to do what we had to do. We did it. So. And after the Battle of the Bulge, I'm going through it pretty fast, but it was tough. And we ended up at the Ruhr River in December when the Battle of the Bulge ended. And on Christmas Eve, we were firing. The bridges were out, so they had to build bridges for it. So we were firing our guns artillery. We had a towed mount about like that. And we had to fire them with artillery to protect them, which we did. And on Christmas Eve, we got an order to stop firing. And they stopped too.
The Germans did?
Yeah. And they started to play Christmas carols. This was one of the greatest moments of my combat, yes. Because we were just sitting there silently. And I was looking at Christmas cards and thinking about home, and they started to play Silent Night, Holy Night. Yeah, man, I was singing right along with them, and so was the guys, you know. And I mean, I didn't hate my enemy. I really didn't. I felt sorry for them because they had to fight. They couldn't say no to Hitler, even though they didn't believe what they were fighting for. At least I believed what I was fighting for.
You know, I think a real take-home is that these guys, all hovering around 100 years old, realize that the best thing in the world is peace, not more war. Maybe a great reason for all of us to remember what war looks like so we don't have to repeat it again. I think this brings us closer to the point of peace is good, though sometimes we do have to fight for what's good.
History is not black and white. History is complicated, and what we want to do is to show that complexity, show those different perspectives, so people have a better understanding of what happened 76 years ago and what it means for today. Because behind it, you have a very strong message of peace, of reconciliation, of freedom that we should always care about and defend.
Talking to Remy Pro, Managing Director of Liberation Route Europe. So, Remy, how does the country of Germany feel about this important, possibly awkward reminder?
Well, the German government has been supportive since 2019, and I think this is a very symbolic move from their side because they believe, and that's the case for decades, that they have a responsibility and they should support projects that make sure that people get access to the information, learn about World War II, and understand the meaning of war and the consequences of wars. And I think this is very symbolic, very powerful. But indeed, as you said, people on the ground might be a little bit upset about it. But I was very moved when I started to work for this project 10 years ago to realize that actually German people are supporting it fully. They want their perspective to be understood, of course. That for them, 76 years ago, it was not a liberation, but it became later on a liberation because they agreed altogether, and I think 99% of Germans today would say the same thing, that they were liberated from the Nazi oppression. And that is very, very important. And apart from this support from the German government, I think what we show here, it's international cooperation with American colleagues, with European colleagues, Canadian colleagues, to show this sense of unity that we all want to keep this memory alive.
Remy Pro, Managing Director of Liberation Route Europe. What is your favorite portion? You're a true insider.
I'm French, and I did 2 years ago this hike along the coast. And I must say that was absolutely stunning. Its views are so beautiful. And it was around the 6th of June. So we were meeting people all the time. We met with lots of veterans, and that was very moving. So I would say Normandy as well is a soft spot for me. And maybe the last one, it's because it's unknown. I think lots of people don't realize that Italy is a very, very interesting battlefield, from Sicily to Milan, Rome, Anzio, Monte Cassino, the Gothic line in Tuscany. You have this very, very deep history that I think most people ignore. And so I would recommend people to travel to Italy for, the normal reasons, the usual reasons, architecture, art, food, and so on, but also to discover the World War II history over there.
From Belgium, that's Remy Pro, Managing Director of Liberation Route Europe. Without him and all of his many supporters, this piece of history might have simply vanished.
Hang on, your reboot reboots in a moment.
Riverside Recovery of Tampa was created to offer state-of-the-art treatment options to people suffering from addiction. The model was developed to meet clients and their families where they are at and provide them with the tools and education needed so that they can achieve long-term recovery. No two people are the same, and no two people have the same experience with addiction. And it is for this reason that we tailor each treatment plan to the unique needs of each individual. Located alongside the Hillsborough River in the heart of Tampa, Riverside Recovery offers the full continuum of care. And what that means is that we offer medical detoxification, residential care, day treatment, intensive outpatient, and outpatient levels of care. The program at Riverside is focused on high-quality clinical care offered in a safe, comfortable, and serene environment where everyone feels empowered to change the course of their lives. The stigma that surrounds addiction continues to be high on the list of reasons that people do not seek help. At Riverside Recovery, we are working to change the narrative and empower people to recognize addiction as a disease, not a moral failing. We can recover, and we do, as evidenced by the thousands of people who have taken that courageous first step in asking for help.
You can discover more at rrtampa.com. That's rrtampa.com. Or reach out at 1-800-871-5440. That's 800-871-5440. 1-800-871-5440.
Life 2.0. It's your life and your reboot. It's Reboot Your Life with Cary Harrison and Ashley Neal.
From the Riverside Recovery Studios in Tampa, Florida, Cary Harrison with you along with Ashley Neal. And thanks for listening to Reboot Your Life, where we help you get back to life you love.
Make sure you subscribe to our podcast wherever you listen. Each week, you'll get new episodes both on the radio and every streaming platform. You can also tweet us at Reboot Your Life.
Well, today we're shining a spotlight on an inspiring figure in the public health arena, Dr. Karen Liller. Dr. Liller is a distinguished USF health professor in the College of Public Health, where her work centers on advocacy and learning how to get things done within the complicated systems in which you and I find ourselves enmeshed.
Dr. Liller is also a researcher and is currently working on topics like suicide prevention in special populations, such as Black youth and LGBTQIA youth, along with violent crimes. As the founder and director of the Activist Lab, she's at the forefront of connecting students and the broader community to the heart of public health issues.
And yes, it's a lab, so there's always evidence-based research behind all advocacy training. It's podcasts, it's seminars, it's webinars. Best of all, student members get real opportunities to engage their own communities and affect positive change.
So join us now as we explore the impactful journey of Dr. Karen Liller and the Activist Lab's mission to reboot lives through public health advocacy. Dr. Karen Liller, welcome to Reboot Your Life.
Well, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
And as an alumnus of USF, I could tell you This was not happening when I was there. I wish it were. I would have been in your lab in 2.5 minutes and the world would look entirely different because of my advocacy skills.
And we would have welcomed you with open arms.
Well, let's talk for a second about the inspiration behind founding this Activist Lab and how it's evolved over the years.
Well, the Activist Lab started in 2018, and the inspiration is actually kind of interesting. before I was director of the Activist Lab, I was a professor here at the college, but I became dean of the graduate school at USF. And while I was dean of the graduate school, I started a leadership institute for doctoral students across USF. Well, after returning to the college after being dean, I wanted to do something similar, but I wasn't sure what I was going to do with it. Was I going to have a leadership institute, or was it going to be a little broader? And at the time, my research for all the years I've been a faculty member has been injury prevention for children and adolescents. And I realized how important policy changes are to the success of those efforts. So I thought, well, could I combine leadership and policy? So thought about it with the dean at that time, Donna Peterson, and I just happened to be at a conference in Washington, and sitting in front of me, we were talking about some issues on firearm injury. There were students from Boston University, and they had shirts on that said Activist Lab. And I thought, that's something I want to maybe learn more about. So after the presentation, I went up to one of the students and I said, so what is this Activist Lab you have at Boston University? Oh yeah, it's great, where students learn how to be advocates. We learn how to do policy. And I thought, this is it. This is what I want. So I flew home, talked to the dean and said, this is what we want to do. We want to start an Activist Lab, but we want to start it at USF in the college. But we didn't know what to call it. So we thought, well, Boston University had the first one. They have an Activist Lab. So we thought for a few days and we realized we couldn't come up with a better name than the Activist Lab. So we called the dean at Boston and said, can we use your name? We'll be the Activist Lab of the South. You be the Activist Lab of the North. And we've got it. He said, I don't care. I hope every school, every college of public health has an Activist Lab. So that's when the Activist Lab was born. And that was back in 2018. And my vision for it was really to be a place where students could get highly involved. I didn't want this to be a top-down effort. I wanted them involved in decision-making and everything that we did. And I wanted to teach them about advocacy, how to be an advocate, how to get things done, no matter what the issue really in public health. So we started with a few grad assistant and I had an administrative assistant still with me today and a couple students, and we started an advisory board, a student advisory board. So, well, fast forward now, and our student advisory board is about 10 to 15 members, undergraduate and graduate public health students. We do education, research, outreach. We do seminars, lunch and learns. We have our own podcast called Advocacy Change It Up. We have a boot camp, a yearly boot camp. We do Activist Lab on the road. We have Public Health in a Minute. If you just go to our website, you'll see all the things. But this grew immensely from just you have an idea. You have an idea in your head, and then how can you move it forward? So, and I'm really proud. I'm really proud the alumni of the Activist Lab today, even after they graduate, a lot of them are in advocacy positions or they do advocacy somewhere in their life.
Let's focus this, Dr. Karen Liller. Everybody at some age, at some point, their parents ripen like bananas. And those bananas maybe get a little brown and they take a little extra care. And so we end up having to advocate for our parents or grandparents. And that means advocate with doctors, with hospitals, with hospice. We really have no control over systems in which people are put. That's a kind of advocacy. Then there's political advocacy, where the government actually works for us, not the other way around. We have forgotten that, a lot of us. There's a lot of different kinds of advocacy, and public health is really where you and I intersect. We all share the same air, we drink the same water, we drive on the same roads, and it's our public health. It's a brilliant idea. You're touching so many hot spots.
We really are. We've covered so many areas too. We've done everything. We recently, back when I was starting, we picked up this idea of vaccinations and immunizations. And we worked with the University of Pittsburgh to develop a simulator that would show, interestingly enough, this was back in 2019, what would happen if just 10% of the population stop getting vaccinated for measles. They shouldn't do it anymore. And with the simulator, it's called Fred Measles Florida. We show how devastating something like that could be. And so it was sort of interesting. I've been, Fred Measles Simulator has been back out in the media because of that. And we hope to update it, with newer numbers. But that's just an example of some of the research we've done. Some of the projects we've done include, right now, we have a project called Adopt a School, where we work with middle schools and high schools to teach those students how to be advocates. How do you get your message across? How do you get a policy started? How do you work with wherever you're at, your setting, your agency, with the politics, as you say, locally, or even at the state, or even at the national level? How do you get that started? How do we propose something and walk it through the process? So we're teaching high school students and middle school, and they're fabulous. There's no magic with learning advocacy. You have to wait till you go to a university, or you have to wait till you're older. Absolutely not. I mean, you can learn this. I could teach this, we could teach this to middle schoolers or younger. What are the steps? How do you, in a 3-minute time period, how do you get your point across, and what you're asking for? We're working also now on loneliness and social isolation. This is an epidemic. The Surgeon General just did a report on this. And what we're doing is we're working across the state. This is a statewide effort to deal with issues of loneliness, social isolation. How do we reach out? How do we get people to understand this? Because it's like loneliness for your health is like smoking 15 cigarettes a day. You have an increased risk of heart disease. You have an increased risk of all kinds of diseases because of the inflammatory state that it sets up in the body. And people are lonely. Surveys now show that in America, about half of us say we're lonely. And so this is really important because it can lead to so many physical problems as well as mental health issues.
And it's greater than just the post-COVID situation, which we all of us fell into that. But this kind of goes on further because people get older, and by virtue of the fact that they've gotten older, they are now isolated. We found that simple things like get a dog changes everything for people. But if they don't know to get a dog, they can't go get a dog. That's kind of what you do. You sort of wake them up in a lot of ways.
Well, we try. We have a lot of educational channels. We're on all social media, Instagram, Facebook, X, as they call it now, LinkedIn, where we have a lot of media posts. We bring in speakers on all these different topics. As I said, we do our own research. So it's a great opportunity for students to learn. These are the issues, but we only promote and we only advocate for things, which basically advocacy is you're acting in support of an issue or cause. We only do it for things that are evidence-based. We don't do anything that someone says, gee, that's an interesting idea. Why don't we fight for that? No. Everything we do is evidence-based. We're clear about what the efficacy is of things we support. So we're careful about that we're following all of the epidemiology and all of the rules, that we need to follow in public health.
Well, that is absolutely exactly what we wanted to hear, and thank you for saying it. We're talking to USF professor Dr. Karen Liller, founder and director of the Activist Lab, at the forefront of connecting students to the community, to the heart of public health issues. Dr. Liller named one of the top 15 national women scholars in health education and health promotion, and is widely published in multiple national publications. You can learn more by simply searching USF Activist Lab. It's that simple.
Dr. Liller, I had a question for you. As you and I both know, but many of the listeners may not know, the legislative session in Florida just ended last week on Friday.
Yes.
To me, it seems like the Activist Lab really stands apart from other advocacy groups that I have been exposed to or been a part of, in that you are teaching and giving people an understanding of the legislative process. Do you think that is one of the things that sets the Activist Lab apart?
I think we do. We walk through the process, but maybe what sets us apart also is the fact that we are an organization under the College of Public Health that really looks at 2 or 3 or more issues a year. We settle on those issues, and we really want to educate about that. We really want to educate about how to do change. And because we have students involved, it's an opportunity to really get them out there in the community For example, I'll pair those students with agencies. We have a project called Moolah, which is more opportunities to use learned advocacy. And Moolah means money, as we know, because I give them a little bit. I give them a few $100s, for travel and things like that, a small stipend. They work directly with an agency on their advocacy issues. I had a student work with the Guardian Ad Litem program, for example. And because of that student, they started a child trafficking court that had to work with children who were not only in the foster care system, but who also had been trafficked. So they started a special court and a special system in the Guardian. What a wonderful opportunity for that student. She worked with judges, she worked with legislators, she worked with so many people. And that's what I want to do. I want to give these students the opportunity to see the process, really boots on the ground experiences, not just education or not just even going to Tallahassee and supporting the law, but I want them as much as possible in the trenches of seeing how this works. And it's not an easy process. I mean, laws, I helped champion the bicycle helmet law in the state of Florida years ago. That took us years to get that law passed.
And yet on a motorcycle, no helmet required.
That's another, right. If you're 21 or older, that's a whole nother thing.
You're helping so many people. And maybe the bicycle riders will think when they get a Vespa.
That's right.
Yes,
that's the idea. Yeah. If you're under 16, you ride a bike on public roads, you have to have a helmet on. You're supposed to. And, so maybe then we hope that behavior, as you say, will follow suit then, as someone, might want to get a motorcycle.
That opens up another issue, Dr. Karen Liller. We look at what the student body looks like at USF, and it's not what a painting might look like. It is a blend of all the people of Earth. It is not what people might think it is. USF is a giant campus, just like University of Florida, just like anywhere else. Right. And so you're going to have African-American students, you're going to have LGBT students and all the rest of it. I imagine you'd be addressing some of those issues too, because these are big deals now in today's world.
Oh, absolutely. We've done whole series on that. We've done series on structural racism. We've done series on dealing with issues, because the ideas for things we work on, in public health is everywhere, as you said in the beginning, right? You could look at something and say there's a public health part to that. Well, how do we choose? There's so many things to work on, right? Well, how this works is I never wanted it to be my decision, my own research. I mean, that would be, great if they wanted to work at that. But we sit down together, we look at the data, and I say to them, what interests you? Which direction do you want to go this year for our areas? And, this year it was great. This year we focused a lot on women's issues, mental health. So I have them involved in the beginning. And the issue they absolutely love, the loneliness and social isolation issue, because I have to tell you, this is not just older people that feel lonely or that. In fact, more cases we're seeing in the younger population. So, and when we do tabling, which is we go to a lot of events, we have a table, we have the activist lab, we have a wheel, like Wheel of Fortune, where you spin it and you answer a question. When we have that, people resonate so much with that. And we've talked to them about the importance of social connections, right? We've talked to them about how important it is. I mean, even something like volunteering, where you can be such a great advocate if you want to support a cause and you really don't want to talk to a legislator or you don't feel comfortable doing that. There's so many ways that you can advocate. Being a volunteer does so much for yourself, physically, mentally, as well as you can mentor others, which is always, a wonderful experience for people, and just developing those connections. So there's many, many ways, but I think in America, we haven't addressed this as well as we need to. And unfortunately, it keeps getting worse.
Dr. Liller, you mentioned a couple times there are things resonating with people and also connection. I think connection is so important Can you share with us a memorable experience, or maybe it's a project, something that you've worked on in the Activist Lab that also can show us how people connecting to these things really has transformed their life?
Yeah, well, as I said, my students, have all gone on to be advocates in their various roles. The student with the Guardian Ad Litem program is now our guardian herself. So she now has a child that she serves as their guardian in the program. I think transformative, though, I have to tell you, was probably back when we did Fred Measles, Florida, and this was a few years ago. I think there's two transformative ones. This first one, we were at a back to school event in Hillsborough County, and we were showing the importance of vaccination. I was on a panel with several other. There were physicians, there were nurses, there was us. We were there, and we showed the simulator and showing the importance of vaccination. And the students were there. A lot of the Activist Lab students were there that had worked on that project with me. And they were so excited. We were in the community and we just got such a good response. However, I must tell you, we also had people there that were not so positive. Individuals who did not want to vaccinate their children were actually against vaccinating their children. We had showed the evidence, we had shown the safety of vaccines, and had a little bit of a conversation with these people because they wanted to express their views. So the students got to see firsthand that this isn't all sunshine, that basically advocacy is not for the weak. As I said, you got to be pretty tough. And I was so immensely proud of them. This was when the Activist Lab was new, and I was worried about them because as the dissent started in the room, I wanted to step in immediately and, take it and try to work with the people. You never want to yell back. That's a negative. You want to know how to, talk to people, compromise. They immediately, though, went to the mics. There were mics around the room, and my students, they took it. They said, excuse me. We are here from the Activist Lab. We have our data. We want to talk to you about this issue. I was so proud of them because I thought this is good because, yes, they were taken aback, but not everyone agrees with you, right? Everyone has their own view about things. And even though you can show data, it is not always about that. It is about how you get that message across and how you talk with someone. So I was really so great about that. I think another great moment was these kids in Adopt-A-School that we're doing in this middle school. They come up with their own issues in their school, and it can be anything from, I don't like the food, and we don't like the dress code. And you know what? We need more time outside, some of those things. But I was so proud of them because after we had been there, and we had taught them and we had worked on their issues, they now have to present these to the principal, right? And to their teacher. And to see them, they are all of, I don't know, maybe 12, 13 years old to get up very confidently. We give them a template, how to stop talking in 3 minutes. Because I said, if you go to Tallahassee, a lot of times, if you get 3 minutes with a legislator, you did good because
you did great.
A lot of times they're like, see ya, and they have my next meeting. And they were up there. They were very confident. They said, I'm so-and-so. I want to tell you why this issue is important, how it affects us, how we think you can help us make change. I mean, it was amazing. They were like 11 years old, 12 years old. So I thought that was a very proud moment when we were able to see, that. And I think we always get a lot of emails and we get a lot of thank yous from people because we are advocating for issues and we are educating people on how they can be advocates. We always advocate people. The best way to be an advocate, or one of the best ways, is to vote, And so we tell them, go out there. If you're unhappy, right, with the situation, you can vote. That's a right. So I said, just go and do that. And we've had people write and say, thank you for saying that, because I wasn't going to vote. And then I heard that and I thought, well, I better go do it. I better go do and vote.
Yeah, it's our most basic way of showing up is
It's
voting.
how you
In
can
other
show
words,
up.
an issue, the future is sitting ahead of you, and you can either participate or not participate. And if you don't participate, you really shouldn't complain about it. And you're reminding people they are captains of their own ship.
You're captains of your own ship. And like I said, if you want to work on an issue, just call an agency. They're begging for advocates. I mean, to work with them as they go up. Being that we're at USF and that I'm employed by USF, I can't really lobby for particular bills, which means go to a legislator and actually talk to him and her about a bill and how I want them to vote. That sort of crosses into lobbying. And because I'm at a state institution, I can't ever do that because USF has its own lobbyists. But what I can do is educate. And so that's why I still can talk to anybody I want as Dr. Liller, as Karen Liller, citizen of Hillsborough County, I can pretty much do what I want. But as Dr. Liller from USF, I can educate, though. I can still meet with these people and say, I want to talk to you about this issue without ever saying, House Bill 329 is up, and we would really like you to vote yes or no. So you kind of walk a line there. And the students actually have a lot more freedom than me, actually.
Well, that's what Socrates and Plato did so well, isn't it? Is that they taught people critical thinking, gave them the tools, and then released them into the universe.
That's what we're hoping. I always say politics, it's like a dance, and sometimes you're leading and sometimes you're following. So, this is all a dance, but in the end, hopefully you'll get to where you want to be.
Well, we appreciate very much you coming on. That wasn't even English. And you're a professor, you're like rolled your eyes. I heard you gasp. You clutched the pearls you're not wearing. You would have. What I meant to say was, we appreciate very much having had you on. We've been talking to USF professor Dr. Karen Liller, founder and director of the Activist Lab at the forefront of connecting students and the community to the heart of public health issues, which we find out are pretty much everything that blinks, moves, and twitches. Dr. Liller was named one of the top 15 national women's scholars in health education and health promotion and is widely published in multiple national publications. You can learn more by simply searching USF Activist Lab. Coming up, the Library of Congress is creating a giant archive for women veterans, inspiring stories.
Are you familiar with Riverside Recovery of Tampa? Well, they offer a profound, all-embracing approach to addiction treatment. With a dedicated team of empathetic professionals, Riverside Recovery is committed to guiding individuals on their path to enduring recovery, using a variety of science-backed therapies, counseling, and support services. Riverside Recovery values the individuality of every recovery journey. Their tailored treatment plans respond to the specific needs, the hurdles, the goals of each resident, providing effective aid regardless of whether you're taking your first steps in recovery or maintaining your progress. With Riverside, recovery isn't just achievable, it's an influential journey towards a healthier, brighter future. The testimonials of those who've undergone treatment there are evidence of rediscovered self-worth and potential. Located on the tranquil Hillsborough River of Tampa, Riverside serves as a peaceful haven, promoting self-discovery and healing. They acknowledge that recovery is about more than just overcoming difficulties. It's also about finding your innate strength and resilience. The Riverside Recovery's committed team are your empathetic allies in your recovery journey. They comprehend that genuine healing involves the mind, the body, and the spirit, meticulously dealing with all facets of addiction. You can discover more at rrtampa.com. That's rrtampa.com. Or reach out at 1-800-871-5440. That's 800-871-5440. 800-871-5440 or rrtampa.com.
You can tweet us anytime on X at Reboot Your Life.